Hey, what's up, U.S. History people? This is Mr. Norris.
And Mr. Lawrence.
We have video number 4 for you in the Big Business Packet. This one is on government attitudes towards business. So let's get started. Mr. Lawrence, why don't you tell us about this?
All right, so it says the federal government generally held a laissez-faire attitude towards business for much of this time period we're studying. So remember, laissez-faire is a term that should be familiar to you from your global history days. Mr. Norris, you remember what we tend to summarize sometimes as laissez-faire as?
If I remember correctly, it's the government keeping their hands off the economy.
That is correct. So to promote a free market, a capitalist economy with little to no government involvement, that was the ultimate attitudes that many business leaders liked at this
I feel like we talked about in class free market and capitalism are intertwined. So take a second and write down free market for us right next to this. Please write down free market and then circle it for us. Okay, so also expanding industries and growing foreign trade seem to justify such an attitude. So we'll begin to see that the U.S. is expanding and trading with other countries. We have people like Matthew Perry who went over to Japan and opened up trade with Japan. In addition, many business leaders made financial contributions, both legal and illegal, to the politicians who set federal policy. So it's a way for them to gain influence.
All right, let's keep moving on. It says the government aided to the growth of businesses in many different ways. So how did the government help? Well, the first one is it provided low interest to zero interest loans and grants to railroad companies to really tell these private companies, here is just a bunch of cash, go out and use that to help create more railroads. They also promoted higher tariffs to eliminate foreign competition. Mr. Norris, do you know what a tariff is?
A tariff is a tax on imported goods, which raises the price of those goods and encourages people to buy American products.
Very good. So it helps to promote American industry. Also, we see limits on the money circulation. So this is actually going to help people. Really, when you think supply and demand, it helps people with money already. So those business leaders who have cash, it puts more value on the money that they have. We'll talk more about this idea as we go through the course. And finally, there's few limits on immigration, which we said one of the key things you need to industrialize is labor. So the more people coming to the Americas, we will see more opportunities to hire workers at a lower wage.
Plus, many of them don't speak English, and it's hard for them to unionize. And many of them come over with little money, so they will take any wages that they can get. All right, several factors led the government to take the first steps in the 1800s towards regulating business. We have the downturns in the national economies. Every time there was a downturn in the national economy, there would be calls for the government to step in and help regulate that. We will see that especially during the Great Depression. We also have growing criticism of practices that saw big business profit at the expense of the poor. What was the name of people who steal from the rich and who steal from the poor and take advantage of the poor and make lots of money, these business owners?
I think we call them robber barons.
Robber barons is correct. And also we have grassroots political pressure for change. And you see this term grassroots, that means it's from the bottom up. So average everyday citizens are the ones demanding change, not the policymakers at the top of the government.
So, Mr. Norris, are we going to start for the first time seeing the growth of what we call third parties in American history?
Third parties, definitely, especially one known as the Populist Party, we will get into.
All right, so some court cases will be important to this unit as they are in every single unit we've been studying. The first one is Munn v. Illinois, and on the side in the picture you'll actually see something that relates to this. So what the issue was here is the issue was control over grain elevator rates. So on to the right-hand side you actually see a picture of a grain elevator. These were used, you can actually still see them in western New York today along the river and the canal in downtown Buffalo. These were used to store grain. And the people who own these structures would actually charge rent to either farmers or suppliers who were keeping grain in those actual elevators.
And they were the only ones that owned them, so they could charge very high rates.
So we see state legislators have the right to regulate business that involves the public interest. That will be the ultimate result of the Munn v. Illinois case. Now, what we consider public interest is the idea of food prices, that if food prices go too high, then it's ultimately going to hurt society. People will not have enough money to purchase food, and you'll have starvation and ultimately chaos throughout society. So again, this is saying that the government has the right to regulate prices, kind of an anti-laissez-faire idea that promote public good.
All right, let's talk about the Wabash case, which is Wabash, St. Louis, and Pacific Railway Companies versus Illinois. So we're staying in Illinois with this one. What this one says is that states could not regulate interstate trade. Interstate trade, again, means trade between two or more states. That is a federal government issue, and only the national government could regulate. That goes back to the court case. Do you remember? Think about it. John Marshall, there were a couple boats. Gibbons versus Ogden. I hope you got that right. And this led to the approval or the creation of the Interstate Commerce Act in 1887. So essentially what the Wabash case does is it overturns Munn versus Illinois. And it says, Illinois, you do not have the right to regulate those grain elevators because that deals with interstate trade.
So our next case is United States v. E.C. Knight Company. So what does this case tell us? Well, it exempted many big businesses from a piece of legislation we're going to talk more about called the Sherman Antitrust Law. So we said a trust, Mr. Norris, is kind of another word for a what?
Monopoly.
And if we're saying the word anti, do we support monopolies?
Absolutely not.
No. So the Sherman Antitrust Act actually made monopolies illegal. But what this case does, it actually removes some of the businesses from what would be covered under that law. So it's a major setback for antitrust regulation. So we're seeing that large businesses are finding ways to circumvent or go around some of this new federal legislation that starts to regulate big business. Finally, it will lead us to a period of significant mergers and consolidation. So again, a merger is what?
When two or more companies combine, like KFC and Taco Bell, and opening their own fast food restaurant.
Absolutely delicious. So as a result of this, we're seeing more companies become larger and larger, kind of the opposite of what the Sherman Antitrust Law wanted to happen.
You have one choice, KFC or Taco Bell. What are you going with?
Taco Bell every time.
Taco Bell? I'm torn. I don't know. That delicious chicken, though. I don't. But is it really chicken? I don't know.
They got good mashed potatoes.
They do. The potatoes are great. Coleslaw is delicious. And can't forget the biscuits.
Yeah.
I know. You got to go with that. I don't know. How about just go and eat them both? That's why you go to the combo place.
That's true.
Okay, Congress does step in with the Interstate Commerce Commission, which is set up by the Interstate Commerce Act, which creates this. And what this is an agency that is set up to investigate the illegal business practices of corporations, especially railroads. So if railroads were charging very high prices to a group of people like farmers, the Interstate Commerce Commission could investigate it. So the Sherman Antitrust Act that we talked about, there's the little Sherman Act. Look at that guy.
My favorite graphic in all of U.S. history.
He is so happy. He's got a little ribbon on him. Is that first place blue ribbon?
He's looking good with that hat, too.
He does. You got to wear that hat. What the Sherman Antitrust Act tries to do is make monopolies illegal. So they declared monopolies and trusts illegal, and they especially do more in the early 20th century.
So, Mr. Norris, would you consider the Sherman Antitrust Act an example of laissez-faire economics?
Definitely not, because the government is getting involved in breaking up business.
Gotcha.
So it is the antithesis of laissez-faire economics.
Nice.
You're an English teacher. You appreciate that, right?
Absolutely. That's a SAT word.
Oh yeah, antithesis. Use it in your next essay. All right, video number 4 response. Please answer the following question for us in at least 3 sentences. How did Supreme Court decisions affect businesses in the late 19th century? You've got a couple different ones that you can choose from in our video today. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you back here for video number 5. Go KFC.